Moral Revolution community, welcome back to our podcast. I'm so glad you joined us today. We're going to dive into all things God's design for healthy sexuality. Let's talk about it.
Hey, let's talk about it, listeners. This month, I have one of my great friends on, Lauren Vallotton.
Hello.
Hello. We're so excited you're here. Today's podcast is for the parents. So, number one, if you started listening and you're like, well, I'm not a parent, and before you shut us down, think about a parent you know that might need to hear this messaging. Because honestly, this isn't very widely talked about for parents. True. It's where we're kind of left in the dark. So when it comes to things all sexuality, go tag your friends, like parent friends, send them this link, say, hey, I found something you might be interested in. And then now you can sign out.
Or do you want to be a parent someday?
Yes. Then you will still benefit from this. So I'm super excited. And here's the other thing. We all know, if you're a listener, if you're a YouTube watcher, you know Jason Vallotton because he is a fan favorite of Moral Revolutions. Like, I think our number one most watched and recommended one is definitely from the Intimacy Ladder with Jason. So this is his beautiful other half and one of our great friends. Lauren, tell us a little bit about what your life looks like. I don't even know if we've ever had Jay do that. So tell us who you are.
Yeah. Okay. I'm Lauren Vallotton. Jason and I have been married just over 10 years. We got married in 2011. And when we got married, if you do know Jason, you probably know this part of his story. He was married before. So when we got married, I became a stepmom of 3 kids. At the time, they were 12, 9, and 6.
Wow.
And so, a lot happens in a decade. We got big kids now. We've got adult children. In fact, our oldest, Elijah, he got married this past year. So he's 22. Riley is 19 and Evan's 17. He's the last big in the house. And then we've got an 18-month-old. So we're really doing it, you guys. We're really spanning the ages here.
That's a parenting expert right there.
Well, I don't know that you can say an expert just because of the experience, but definitely experience.
Yes, lots
definitely.
of experience.
We're very much learning as we go.
Amazing. Okay, so one thing we want to tell you before we get kicked off is we have been working around the clock. No, but definitely it's been keeping me up at night because it's been a dream of ours. Most of you know we have a resource called Parenting Sexuality that Havila Cunnington helped us with, but we really wanted to up it after we did Date Well. For those who follow us avidly, you know about Date Well. It's all about the community and the conversations around how to date well. We were like, we want to do something more for parents because it's not a one and done. It's not something where you just go read a book, listen to a course, and you're like, I've got it figured out.
Right.
I have all of the answers now. So we've been working on parent well, raising kids in a hypersexualized culture, and Lauren is joining the team to help us with that.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Okay. Really, really excited about it, you guys. I think if you're a parent, or if you just even imagine being a parent in today's culture, it can feel really overwhelming. There's a lot going on, and our kids are inundated with worldly cultures of sex. And so this is an area that I think a lot of parents don't feel really equipped in. Because you're only equipped if you've either studied your brains out and have decided to become a master at it, or miraculously your parents killed it and you learned from them, which is not usually the case. So I think this is an area of parenting that can be a real challenge. And honestly, in order to see the next generation thrive, we have to get really good at this. And so I think Kate and I and the team are really committed to helping parents in this journey, and using some of our own trial and error, what worked, what didn't work, talking through our journey of parenting teenagers and children through sexuality, but then also consulting experts in their fields who can speak into this subject matter and really help equip a generation of parents to raise children that don't need healing in this area because they've really got it down. So we're really excited. Depending on when you're listening, it's going to be available soon, which we're pumped about. It's going to be a good time.
Yes. So if you want to know more, head to moralrevolution.com/parenting, and you'll be able to find that information. But what you said, I was like, this is so good. I'm so visual, so I pictured the two things. Either studied your brains out or miraculously your parents did it perfectly, right?
Yeah.
And the thing about the study your brains out is as parents, it can be so overwhelming for all the things. You're what can I feed my kids? What about bedtime? You're like, there's so many angles.
Is there an app for this?
Yes. That you're like, the sexuality thing.
What about their color of poop?
Yes.
Anything you can think of.
Oh my gosh. So you're like, the sex thing, you're like, I'm going to probably avoid that one.
I know.
Or at least push it off till I
have
absolutely,
I have time for that one.
Yes. So definitely part of our experience and belief has been the younger you start, the better.
Oh, yeah.
Normalizing conversation. So we are so passionate about equipping you.
Yeah.
We're going to spend today on the podcast talking a bit about it, but please join us more there if you have any further questions, which unless you've studied your brains out, I think that's you.
And even if you have, chances are you might have not found the best information. So
Yes.
let us help you.
Yes,
We're
and
excited.
We have really fun people that
Yes.
we're bringing in.
Yes.
So super
Yeah.
excited. Okay, so Lauren, tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about your experience.
Okay.
Did your parents miraculously do everything perfectly? What was the home like that you grew up in?
Well, it was perfect. So no. Yeah, if you are familiar with language that Moral Revolution uses, I would say that I grew up in a silent culture of sex. I have an amazing relationship with my parents. My parents are incredible people who I never for one moment doubted their love for me. I really grew up in a gift of a home in that capacity. But I was really left to navigate conversations about sex and sexuality, dating, anything in that arena. I was left to navigate on my own. And when I think about it now, I realize that they weren't equipped with how to have these conversations. I'm the oldest of 3 children, and I'm the only girl. And so I was a grand experiment, but also I think I just gave them a really easy time most of the time compared to my brothers. I was that kid that just wanted to cross all the T's and dot all the I's. I wanted to get A's. I wanted to make my teachers happy. I wanted to make my coaches happy. I wanted to make my parents happy. So, they probably didn't feel like they needed to help me out in some of those areas. But as I grew up and as I started navigating puberty and the teenage years and high school in particular, there's a lot that goes on in the psychology of even a good kid.
Yeah.
There's a lot that happens, and it has to do with hormones. It has to do with culture. It has to do with friends. It has to do with, who are you surrounded by? And so I was parented through that season of my life by whatever was around me. Now, luckily, I found the Lord when I was 15 years old. And so as a freshman in high school, I wanted to do the right thing. But even making good choices becomes difficult when you don't have the framework, you don't have the language. I was being taught everything that I knew by the people around me. And we've talked about the principle of first mention probably many times. I was definitely being exposed to everything under the sun by people who not only were they not experts, but they were making horrible choices of their own.
Yeah.
So that was really challenging. And not until I was older did I really realize some of the implications of that on my own life and why I made decisions that I did. I started dating when I was pretty young. I had a boyfriend in freshman year of high school. We dated all the way through my high school career. And it was a really unhealthy relationship. He loved the Lord, I loved the Lord, but we didn't know what we were doing. And that was kind of my learning ground. I just had to figure it out. And I remember in my college years realizing wow, my parents I had a lot of freedom. My parents didn't tell me what to do, but they also didn't tell me what not to do. We just didn't talk about it. And for me, growing in my relationship with the Lord and really growing in a desire for health in all areas of my life, as an adult, I had to figure out, okay, unintentionally, what did that normal that I grew up in, what did that build inside of me?
Yeah.
What kind of structures are in my mind around the topic of sex? How is this going to, because whatever your normal is, unless you change course intentionally, you will repeat whatever is your normal. And so luckily I had the knowledge at least to know, I have to be intentional about this. I need to learn a new way if I want to do it differently.
That's so good. And that's such a good question for all of us if we've never been posed with that or thought about it, to think, wow, what are my perspectives that I've simply just adopted or adapted to based on the home we had.
Right. Exactly.
Incredible. So then fast forward to becoming a parent.
Yes.
What obstacles did you have to overcome? Because I'm sure there were some based on your living, not just recreating. Yeah. Not just saying, oh, I'm going to do what I saw done. But then it's when you're not recreating, then you're kind of I'm pioneering something that you're there's always a question mark of is this the right way? What do we do here?
Yes, 100%. Well, Luckily marrying Jason, he had done a lot of the groundwork. Like when the kids were little, Jason, this is a very known fact about his story, but when he was 10 years old, he was introduced to pornography, and soon after that developed an addiction to masturbation and pornography that lasted a few years into his teenage life. And so he knew by experience how early children are exposed. Now, that was back in the 80s. So imagine, 1990 probably. And he knew then how easy it was to find pornography. And so raising our kids in this day and age, he just knew like this conversation has to start early. This conversation has to, it has to be profound. It has to make an impact. And so he was really, really intentional. Our oldest is a boy, and he and Elijah have always been close, but Jason was very intentional with Elijah, talking through things when he was young. So I felt grateful that coming in as a step parent, blending a family is challenging. Becoming a parent to children who aren't yours, that's challenging. There's all kinds of hurdles involved, which a whole nother subject. But in this arena, what is common to all families, I think, is there has to be a firm foundation of trust laid in the family between parents and kids. Yeah. And I'm thankful that Jason had done a lot of that groundwork. So, he brought me in, he empowered me to develop trust with the kids. For us, that looked like me just working on building relationship and connection before I was bringing a ton of correction or counsel. Yeah. It was really just kind of helping them learn that they could really trust me as a person, inviting them to share whatever they wanted to share with me at any point that felt good to them. Like that's part of the uniqueness of being a step parent is you can't just come in and assume a place in a child's life. Yeah. But there's people probably listening that are actually parenting kids through their sexuality. Maybe they're step parents, maybe there's grandparents, maybe there's aunts or uncles or teachers or all of us. I think just knowing that the most impact you're going to have on a child is if they give you permission to influence them, which happens if you have a trust relationship built, if there's love between the two of you. So I really focused on that for quite a while. And then I let the kids kind of at their own pace involve me in their journeys of the heart, the more intimate things in their lives. And, we have had a pretty great relationship from the beginning. Of course, there's challenges and there's things that we've had to work through, but I would say that's been a strong suit. And so the hurdles probably that we faced were, again, kind of unique to our scenario. We were co-parenting children through very volatile years of their lives with another parent involved that didn't live in our home, whose culture we couldn't control, who agreed on lots of things. And then we had different ways of thinking about lots of things too. So that's a challenge, right? Like establishing any sort of consistency for kids is huge. So that was a real hurdle for us. What is relatable to any parenting situation in that is, you've got cultures competing for your kids' attention everywhere you look. Yeah. They're in school, they're in youth group, they've got friends in the neighborhood, they've got extended family. I always talk about how, like cousins and aunts and uncles, like these are people in your lives that you love and adore, but you don't choose them. They just are your family. So you've got cultures around you that are influencing your kids left and right. So that's a challenge, The battle, I think, is winning the heart of the child, that you become the place where when questions arise, they trust your voice the most. And, gosh, I could go on and on. Yes. Am I off track?
No, I love it. Well, again, my visualness, I'm like literally just picturing the words. There's cultures competing for your child. Oh, yeah. And realizing that and the weight of it, but then the beauty of how do we win their hearts? Yeah. I love that.
That's it. That's when you're parenting teens, you go in and out of feeling like you're winning that battle. And that's just normal. We've learned that that's normal. We have had 3 teenagers grow up in our home, and each one of them is very different, but it's been true with each one of them. You sometimes feel like you're killing the game, and sometimes you feel like you're losing miserably. And I think that's just the journey. It's just, it's a child growing into an adult. It's just a process. And, what really helped us trust the Lord is seeing our first child through his high school years and knowing that our aim was to be his safe place and be the voice of reason for him, to be the voice of love, to be the unconditional support, regardless of choice, regardless of decision, that we were going to be his home. In the tough seasons where it felt like he was rebelling against us, we were met on the other side with a return every time, because we really had established, regardless of whether he agreed or disagreed on whatever topic it was, or if he was trying to explore his freedom, he always returned home. And we just realized, okay, the goal is to love. If you keep the love on, thank you, Danny Silk, and if you make a commitment to be the safe place, they will return every time.
I love that. That's so powerful. Now, when I'm thinking of everybody listening, so many people, like we even established earlier, it can be really disconcerting, the whole topic, for their own reasons, right?
Yeah.
Where they're like, this is too big, this is messy, maybe I have like undealt with pain, you're just like, it triggers you. So I know part of establishing that safe space is creating peace in those conversations.
Yeah.
And like having the emotional maturity and ability to not react, but to respond well.
Yeah.
How did you guys do that? Because sometimes too, our kids can even just feel the tension when they're asking a question, or they've made the choice, or we have reacted in the past bad. So how do you then reestablish, wait, I will be a safe space for you. I forgive me for that.
Good.
Give us some more of what that practically could look like when they're I don't know how to be a safe space because my anxiety increases and they feel it.
I know. We found that if we just talk about what's going on inside of us with the kids, it diffuses a lot of things. So, I think as a parent in this journey, like the game is to play it pretty cool. Like work on your game face. Like don't freak out. Don't freak out. Practice not freaking out in the mirror. Whatever you got to do.
Because penis and vagina.
Yeah. And the thing is that when, sometimes, it depends on their personality, right? But we had one child who loved to say the shocking things because they loved to say the shocking things.
They want the reaction.
And I'm telling you what, they got it every time with me, like every time. Now, by the end, I caught on, right? I'm like, oh, this is a game. We are playing a game. So I'm going to work on my game face. I'm going to work on keeping it cool. I'm going to work on not giving that reaction and actually letting you work out the angst going on until you settle enough so that we can have a heart-to-heart conversation and it just isn't about pushing each other's buttons. So, that's a practice. But I think when I look back on some of those years, practically speaking, I worked on not reacting. I worked on listening. And then when I got it wrong, when I let something trigger my fear, and if I didn't respond the way, in hindsight, I spent a lot of time in my mind. I don't know, everybody's a bit different, but I'll have a conversation with somebody and go over it 25 times in my head sometimes. Especially if it's a conflict or if it's a tense moment. I remember, parenting the kids through these years and going back to my room and sitting on my bed and contemplating what we had just discussed and asking myself, did you do a good job of that? Did you make it about connection? Did you make it about the heart? Did you ask the right questions? Did you listen well? If not, go clean up that mess, because they're old enough to actually talk to about that. Yeah. So I would do it over and over again. I'd go back and I'd say, hey, listen, I'm really sorry. I felt fear when you asked me this question or when you told me this fact. Here's the truth, and here's my vulnerability in the middle of your story. And I would tell them stories of my own journey in sexuality, my own struggles, this experience of mine causes me to have fear when you ask this question, but I want you to know the truth. The truth is ... So actually unpacking for them, like, I have fear in this area because of X, Y, and Z. They need to know your story.
Yeah.
Your kids need to know your story. It's empowering. It's freeing. It's, children, especially, my personality is I like to have things in order. I like things to be clean. I like to know what I'm doing. I like to know the rules. And so if I'm not careful, my kids can feel like I'm rigid or inflexible or, back to the hurdle question. like I said before, I was the kid who I wanted to make my teachers happy. I wanted to do my homework well. I wanted to make straight A's. And so purely being different to my children in that regard, I'm like, I have 3 of them that are like, can we just, is school over yet? Like, are we done here? Are we done? Can we be done? Please. So just all of your kids are either similar or different to you. And if you are different to your children, which chances are if you have more than one, you're going to find somebody in the family who doesn't relate to your style. It can be hard to parent somebody in a journey that you can't actually relate to.
Yeah.
I don't understand wanting to break the rules all the time. Why do you always want to break the rules? I don't even understand that personality type. Like, that's a total different wiring. Well, when you're running up against that in this parenting journey, if you're running up against it, I think the best thing you can do is diffuse and expel the lie that there's only one right way, or that there's only, if you're not doing it my way, you're doing it wrong. If your journey doesn't look like mine, it's wrong. Like, we need to give our kids freedom to be themselves, to understand themselves, to give grace to themselves. But if we're vulnerable with our own story, it creates so much permission, I think, for our kids to actually own their own stories and be honest about theirs.
Oh, I love that. And I think as you were sharing that, some parents, I'm sure we haven't experienced that when we were children,
right? Of
our parents coming to us and saying,
oh, no,
I'm so sorry I did that wrong. Or so we haven't led that way yet.
Right.
But imagine how much that would just decrease the anxiety of getting it right the first time, when you've created that culture of, I can go back and clean this up.
Right.
And so you don't have that anxiety of just, what do I say right now,
Yeah.
So I love that. And you're modeling the vulnerability that then they're going to see, and it's just going to open the space.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So
we spent a lot of time telling our kids that freedom is in the light. So talk about it. Like, you don't want to walk around in shame.
Yep. When
we are in shame, we make these kinds of decisions. When kids are walking in shame, when they think they've done something wrong or they're not proud of themselves, they fulfill their own prophecies over themselves.
Wow.
Like, they believe they're doing something wrong. They believe they are wrong. They believe they are bad. The quickest way to break that is just by empowering them to be open and honest about it. So we tell our kids all the time, if you don't like that feeling you're walking around with, talk about it. If you don't like the shame that you feel, you should probably let us know what happened yesterday, because we can feel it. We don't want you to walk around like that all day. You don't need to walk around like that. Let's talk. What's going on? And it would take, sometimes it takes a few asks or a week,
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, so in a blended family, which I'm sure there's so many listeners that are like, we've actually had lots of messages come in like, I need more guidance in this. So it's so powerful. Is how do you decide and commit to what your role is?
Me as one parent in the dynamic. Well, you mean specifically in a step parenting scenario? Yeah. So I, early on had to figure out my role. And I think a lot of, our kids really wanted more mothering in their life. Like, it was invited, which made it easy. It made it easy for me to show up as a mom to them, because they really pulled it out of me. They really wanted that, which was amazing. But step parents, I think often it's challenging, because we find ourselves with a load of responsibility, but we don't hold all the authority. We feel really responsible to steward these lives and to take care of these kids and to help them move forward in health and wholeness, but we don't have all the authority. And anytime you have a lot of responsibility for something, but not a lot of authority, you feel powerless and stuck. So I spent a lot of years feeling pretty powerless, because, I was just one of 3 parental figures, and I wasn't a biological parent. So clearly my say wasn't always the most powerful say. Now, my husband did an incredible job of modeling that. He and I led together from the very beginning. So there wasn't a lot of decisions that we made separate from each other. We were a team. I think that's a real key in step parenting scenarios, is that the biological parent is the one who actually creates a culture of expectation for the kids. So from day one, Jason was saying, the kids would say, can we have pizza for dinner? And he would say, I don't know. I'll talk to Lauren about it, or I'll talk to mom about it, and I'll let you know. It could be basic stuff that he totally could have made the call on. But to establish a culture of, we do this together in partnership, he decided to do it that way. That really set us up for success when it came to some of these tougher these tougher things because I really felt like an empowered member of the team rather than the outside parent who just had some advice every now and then. That said, so I did carry a load of responsibility, but further along into my journey of being a step parent, I actually found that in order to walk free of a powerlessness that I think a lot of step parents walk in, is I had to relieve myself of the false responsibility to be mom for them. Like, I'm not their mom. I'm never going to be their mom. I'm never going to be their biological mom. They have one. They love her. That's good. That's a good thing to have a biological parent that you love. That is the goal. I had to take off a sense of responsibility I put on myself to be something I was never going to be. To me, that didn't necessarily have implications of like, you know, I'm not really their mom, and so that's hard or that's hurtful to me. It wasn't like that. It was more like, my job is to be a safe place for them, somebody who they know unconditionally loves them, somebody that they know they can come to with anything, somebody that they know will always show up, always be supportive, somebody who is up for parenting them at the level of intimacy that they're up for. Like, I'm available. I'm here. That's very different than the role of a biological parent. It's a support role. It's a safe place. It's an addition to. Like, I get to be a bonus to them. I'm not trying to replace anybody or be anything that I'm not. I get to be in addition to.
Wow.
That's a gift, you know. So that was huge for me.
That's incredible. Okay, so we're gonna go to teenagers.
Okay.
Because I feel like I can sense I'm on the edge of my seat on needing to know that
Oh,
we're just
yeah.
entering it. We're entering, well, I guess we're
Junior
tweens.
high.
Yeah, we're in junior high. But share a little bit of, so parenting kids in a hypersexualized culture,
Yeah.
which it's funny, but even just from your experience with your son who's now 22 to your 17-year-old, how much things change.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
It's crazy. And then maybe even some differences of boys and girls, because I know we get questions a lot, even specific genders, like, how do I tell my daughter about this with, you know, maybe what she's watching or who's influencing her? You know, there's so many questions about modesty. And then boys, can moms talk to the boys about it too? Or just the dads? So just maybe a couple of your tips where you're like, based on our experience, this is what I would repeat.
Yeah.
And this is what I would do a little differently.
Oh, that's good. So our kids grew up in Christian school. The older two went to Christian school till they were in 8th grade. And, you know, they went to Christian school, but they by no means lived sheltered lives. They had walked through their parents getting divorced. They walked through living in 2 homes with very different cultures. You know, neither Jason nor the kid's mother were people who were like isolated and relegated to the church world only. Like, our kids grew up with a sense of culture, with a sense of what happens around them, but they did grow up in Christian school. So we thought they were going to be pretty prepared to go out into the big world and to experience high school. And I'm telling you what, we were shocked by what they encountered within their first months of being in school at the high school level. You know, I remember very specifically our oldest coming home from his first week on campus at high school. And some of the stories he told us about things he saw and heard were appalling. And we had this moment where we realized, you know, we actually couldn't have foreseen that. We could not have expected what we heard him come home with. There's no training for that. There's no way to know what your kids are going to encounter completely.
Wow.
I felt really thankful that he came home and told us.
Right. Like, that's a win.
The win is that when he was shocked by what he saw on campus, that he came home and he told us right away. And we all kind of had a moment of going, wow, together. Like, wow, that's a lot. Like, so, you know, sadly, that kind of, you know, it didn't stop. So I think that's the question that we have as parents. You're like, how long do I let my kids be inundated by absolute trash every day? Like, how long do I send my kids into a completely hypersexualized, sexually inundated culture that they have to just swim around in for 8 hours a day. So, that's different for every family. Your options are different. Every family has different even options. I think for us, I wish that we would have, I remember him asking me to homeschool him at one point, and I just thought, oh God, I can't. I just can't. And the truth is I couldn't, it wasn't realistic, but we could have looked into making a change. We could have actually sat down and gone, hey, you know what? We could either keep plowing for another 3 years and do our best job at staying connected and hope that works, or we could actually be inconvenienced enough to actually think through, are there any other options? When it's your first kid, you really only know what you know.
Yeah.
So I didn't know anybody in charter school at the moment. I didn't know anybody in private high schools at the moment. Everybody we knew was just doing this, so we were doing it. And you have to learn your city, learn your resources, we just hadn't done it before. So I wish we had actually assessed that, because I think it could have made a big difference in his high school career. Ultimately, he loves the Lord and has an amazing wife and loves Jesus. So I'm he took care of it. But, those are things that I think you have to kind of wrestle through. Difference between girls and boys, I would say, naturally, even growing up in a home where right and wrong was not a question. Our kids weren't wondering what was a good choice and what was a bad choice. But when you are a teenager and you're flooded with hormones and emotions and feelings, it overrides so much of what is right or wrong. And you have no physiological capacity to make decisions based on cause and effect when you're a teenager. So what do we expect, right? Yeah. I just think for us, boys and girls, I've noticed boys are seeking adventure. Boys are seeking a thrill. Boys want a fix of some sort. So they're kind of going after these experiences. I didn't see girls doing that as much as they were really looking for deep connection. They're looking for in their little emotions and in their hormonal development and in their questions about who am I and am I lovely and am I lovable? And, they're looking for these deep connections, which I think what's sad is what happens is, this chemistry between boys and girls. Boys are looking for this fix. Boys are looking for an adventure. Boys are looking for an experience. And a girl is looking for a deep connection. A girl is looking to know, am I lovely? Am I acceptable? They'll give things to each other to meet those needs and then break each other apart because they have no capacity to actually meet the real need. No. So I think what girls and boys are needing and navigating in their teenage years is what creates such a volatile situation sometimes. And unfortunately, we walked more than one of our kids through scenarios just like that. Wow. And it's heartbreaking. And I will say this, and I don't want to belabor the question, but I will say this. There are things like that are just real, that your kids could know all the right answers and find themselves in situations that are regrettable. I think as a parent, I've been so moved by knowing that even if my kids do the very things that I'm the most afraid of them doing, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay because we have connection, we have trust between each other, we have relationship. God is faithful with our kids. And I think that was one of the biggest things I had to realize. And I'm so thankful now with number 3, he's wired completely different. He's, it's a whole new scenario, right? Every child is different. So what you experience with one is so different than the other. But now that we're on our 3rd teenager growing up in our house, I can honestly say there's so much less fear involved because what seemed so high stakes, we realize nothing is beyond the reach of love and connection. No bad choice, no scary moment, no cultural influence is beyond the reach of love. And if that's what we're cultivating in our home, we actually don't need to be afraid of what will come. We'll have what we need in order to navigate it.
Mic drop, Lauren. That was so
Boom.
good.
No.
There's the meme for the podcast right there. No bad choice is beyond the reach of love and connection. Yeah. That's so powerful. Thank you so much for this.
You're welcome.
Thank you for
Thanks
being
for
with
having
us.
me.
Parents, I know you enjoyed this. I wish I could be taking notes when I'm listening. I'm there's so much good stuff here. So re-listen if you want to, share with your friends, and then remember to connect with us at moralrevolution.com/parenting. We have tons of resources there. And then our new and favorite one coming out, Parent Well.
Yeah.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you guys for listening. If you want to learn more and check out all of our awesome content, be sure to head to our website at moralrevolution.com and our socials, Instagram, Facebook, all of them. But before you leave, don't forget to like, review, subscribe, all of the things. We want you guys to come back and join us. We enjoyed having you. See you next time.